author and asset management practitioner with over 30 years experience designing and implementing award-winning programs. His presentation will cover the state of the practice, including advancements in the development of asset management practices, including updates on available frameworks such as the ISO 55000 asset management standards, professional bodies such as the Institute for Asset Management, and a newly established Boston branch, helping to advance best practices and additional resources such as available research papers that participants can leverage in understanding the benefits and challenges of change. In addition, as a brief case study will be presented on a research facility's 65-building, 220-acre site that leveraged some AM practices that led to an award-winning project. John, please take it away.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right. There's my mug right there on the right-hand side. And welcome to Asset Management, an update on the state of the industry. Hopefully my slide deck will work here. Let me see the next slide on the bio. Welcome, folks, to today's presentation. A little bit about myself. At one time, I was local. Well, I am still local, but I travel so much. And I ran the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority's, MWRA's, award-winning asset management program. Today, I consult on those learnings. I even published a book, as was mentioned, in 2016. It captures all of those learnings and the tips and tricks of making new practices stick. I will cover more on that later in the presentation. So today's agenda, while brief, is hopefully impactful and will help each listener to gather some nuggets of information to build upon. As you can see, we will cover asset management briefing and example frameworks, professional bodies and available resources, supporting this practice, asset management program development and implementation, some of its common challenges and solutions, and as was mentioned, followed by an example case study that employed some of the tactics discussed today, and hopefully all of which will be useful to you too. Regarding asset management, I'd like to talk about a holistic approach as depicted in the graphic that covers an asset's life cycle. As shown, it shows the major activity milestones from design to construction to maintenance and repair and replace, as depicted with CapEx for capital expenditures and OpEx for operational expenditures. There are a few definitions available, and we've listed one here that talks about a set of integrated processes to manage costs, risks, and service levels. These are some key words, and are more detailed in some industry frameworks, such as the ISO 55000 standard. To simplify that definition, and before we get off to the other frameworks, I still like to simplify all this information in what EPA described back in 2000 as the 5 questions that we should be able to answer if we're doing asset management 101. You'll hear more about these steps in the case study at the end of the presentation. So question 1, what assets do I own? What's my inventory? Question 2, which ones are critical to our service? So it talks about risk and service levels. Question 3, do I know their condition? So condition assessment program. Question 4, am I maintaining them? A preventive maintenance program. And question 5, do I have an O&M and capital funding plan? So we have financials set aside for timely renewal replacement. It's not as simple as the 5 questions, because to answer every single one of the questions is a whole host of other things you have to do. However, I really like this because people can put it in context as we move through the topic of asset management. Here's one framework, ISO 55000. 55000 is the overview, 55001 management requirements, and 55002 is the systems and the guidelines for application. Initially, this was a publicly available standard called PAS 55, published by the British Standards Institution in 2004. The ISO series of asset management was launched in January 2014, and it got the name 55,000 from the PAS 55 number it had previously. This can be easily Googled to get more information, but it's generally about having documented processes to manage all aspects of your business relative to asset management, such as having an asset management policy, asset management plans for major asset classes, a CIP process, etc. Another framework is the UPTIME elements, created by Reliability Web's CEO, Terrence O'Hanlon, or Terry as he goes by. We really like this because it provides a visual of the main elements with a particular focus on maintenance and reliability. Plus, it allows the key stakeholder groups to get a sense of the deep dive required for a robust effort. One of the best parts of the asset management definition that I like is the part about integrated set of processes. And this is important to recognize and will lead those who understand this to early and lasting success. In the end, and you'll hear more about this, it's about people and getting them to work on a process together and breaking down operational silos. With both the ISO and the UPTIME elements frameworks, there's formal training and certification available. Including this in your program provides another key element, which is helping everyone speak a common language around maintenance and asset management. Some of the things I'd like today, in addition to what is available through IFMA, is the areas of asset management reliability. So there are 3 professional bodies listed here: the Reliability Web, Society for Maintenance and Reliability Professionals, or SMRP, and the Institute for Asset Management, or the IAM. For the Reliability Web, Terry O'Hanlon and his team have a multitude of conferences and training sessions, periodicals, reference books, including the UPTIME magazine, which is free. I like it because it provides real-life stories as to what's happening at facility managers around the globe. So feel free to look that up, UPTIME magazine. Reliability Web also does research and provides user guides. We were particularly involved with some of the research and user guides, which you'll see in a few minutes. They have an awards program, and it's depicted on the top right picture, which has been fantastic because it's provided some peer pressure between different consultants, clients, and other programs that we see around the world. It is an international award program. And as well, you'll see listed 3 times in red certification. So the Reliability Web has what's called Certified Reliability Leader Certification. It's a training and exam around the UPTIME elements. The Society for Maintenance and Reliability Professionals, SMRP, they have an annual conference, and they have 2 certifications. One is the Certified Maintenance and Reliability Professional, which is the designation I hold, and the Certified Maintenance and Reliability Technician. One is for the manager, and one is for the trades tech. And thirdly is the Institute for Asset Management, which has a newly formed U.S. chapter and actually a local Boston branch, of which I'm a member. Some of you may have heard of this. Please feel free to contact me if you'd like to be on our mailing list. They as well have the Institute for Asset Management certificate and diploma. These are 2 certifications. So a few of these are representing the maintenance professional, and a few of these represent the asset management professional. And these are all fairly new within the past few years. The Society for Maintenance and Reliability Professional has been around the longest. I like to say that is basically the professional engineer or PE designation for the maintenance person. Here are the 2 example certificates that I'm proudly hanging on my wall at my office that are helping to advance the knowledge and professionalism of the industry. To the left is the CMRP, and to the right is the Certified Asset Manager. Also, available resources, or I would call maybe reference material. These next 2 slides are resources that I personally rely on each and every day, from professional organizations to reference materials that I keep on my desk. Professional organizations provide training and certification opportunities, to help advance the culture within your organization. Reference materials help provide the how-to. New is the IAM USA chapter, which I mentioned was formed in 2016 with regional branches popping up around the U.S., with one right here in Boston. They have a 2015 Asset Management Anatomy book that is a free download. And that's the picture in the middle. That's a reddish color. So the top one is the International Infrastructure Management Manual. I consider this the Bible. It's a little expensive, but it provides guidance around standardization for condition assessment, asset hierarchy, and a whole host of other things you would look to do in your asset management program. That can be found on that website listed right there, www.ipwa.com. Next is the Asset Management Anatomy. That is a brief that can be downloaded for free, and it ties together all the elements of ISO 55000 in graphical representation. The next one is Maintenance and Reliability Best Practices by Ramesh Gulati. It's a fantastic and easy read and a good reference book for the maintenance professional. And last but not least is actually a guide that I mentioned earlier. It's called the Reliability Center Maintenance Project Manager's Guide that can be found on reliabilityweb.com. And I was proud to be a part of that committee that crafted that user's guide. Also, here are some of the studies that were referenced earlier, which have been helped to identify where the industry is going. These are also accessible by Google. I'm going to come back to these in just a minute and tell you about some of the common themes that this research identified. So McGraw-Hill report was what they call the Smart Market Report. While it was focused on water infrastructure asset management, it included some 400 utilities. McGraw-Hill said they would have been happy with 100 participants. So the data set we have there is phenomenal. And it's a book that includes best practices and 4 return on investment case studies that document where people have seen the benefit of asset management from a financial sense. It also includes non-financial benefits. The second report was a research report done by Terry O'Hanlon on asset management practices, investments, and challenges for 2014 to 2019. There were 1,000 participants across industry. 2 very good research reports if you wanted to get familiar with the practices in asset management, where they are and where they're going and what the benefits are. Moving on to agenda item number 3, which is the program development implementation. We'd like to try and help folks boil it down to a few steps so they can get their arms around a simple program or process if they're going to do a holistic asset management program. So steps 1, 2, and 3 can be completed in a relatively short period of time, say 2 to 6 months, while step 4, implementation component, will typically be in the measure of years. It truly depends on your maturity and ability to handle the improvement activities with in-house staff or if outside resources are needed. If 100% of the project is completed by in-house staff, the schedule will be expanded as folks are already balancing a normal workload. Outside assistance can shorten the implementation schedule and in many cases help bring in expert advice. So step 1 is typically a kickoff and visioning meeting with key stakeholders and the sponsor. We do data gathering, some best practice training. So we go to step 2, you're able to score yourself appropriately. We conduct staff and field interviews as well during step 1. Step 2 is we come in and we have a variety of scalable surveys. We've got a 20-question survey, a 40-question survey, a 200-question survey, and for those that really want a deep dive, it might be a big international company or multiple sites, we've got a several hundred, 600-question survey. After the survey is done, we sit with the client and we develop a roadmap that's prioritized on how they're going to execute and close the gaps that are seen. Step 4, implementation, is where the challenges are typically noted. Here's just an example of what is typically done for the set of criteria off to the right, which is the ISO 55000 example, plus if we can also do an uptime elements example or others. Where the organization self-scores themselves, led by a consultant or facilitated by a consultant team, on a variety of topics with each assigned from a score of 1, which is not in place, to a score of 5, which is mature. And this allows the creation of a spider or radar diagram as shown in the middle of the slide. From here, the team will look at what is called the current state, sometimes referred to as is, the as-is state, and work to develop a program improvement plan, which is also referred to as the future state, or to-be state. Just some technical jargon that you'll hear as you begin to look into the process. In this example, one can see the broad range of topics range from strategy and business to asset registry, technology, risk, training, capital improvement programs, and financials. It helps provide a baseline from which to build in advance a robust program versus a single set of separate projects. Challenges. Now, coming back to the research we saw a minute ago, one challenge is that the implementation phase has some of the biggest hurdles. As noted on the reliability web graphic on the right, the 2014 study showed that only 30% of change initiatives are successful. It is amazing. And there are a few other supporting studies, such as the McGraw-Hill and Harvard Business Review, to name a few, that have concluded these same issues in the same percentages. Leading impediments to change include culture, leadership, involvement, engagement, and having a long-term plan. Again, as mentioned, a program view versus a project view. This slide begins to define some of the key solutions that I have personally witnessed over the years and are always included in our program improvement plans. Executive sponsorship, sometimes called a corporate sponsor, with some connectivity of the program to the company's strategic plan or line of sight. Use of cross-functional or cross-departmental teams working together to close the gap and solve the problems. Training to create the common language. A good example, as noted before, was the CRL, Certified Reliability Leadership Training, by Reliability Web, which is tied to the uptime elements. Also, there is ISO 55000 training available. Another key solution area includes capturing and communicating program benefits to justify the business case or ROI. And again, an integrated and programmatic view that includes a multi-year plan and assigned resources. As noted below, how does safety culture gain momentum? Through a robust programmatic approach to execution. Regarding executive sponsorship and execution strategies, here are two examples. Steering committee charter on the right. I apologize if you can't read it. It's an example, which I like to try to keep to a one-page document, which covers the mission, the members, who the executive sponsor is, that team's deliverables and their schedule, key activities, a list of expected benefits, a team charter date, and what you can't see that down below there is we have people sign the document. They're part of the membership, so it's a commitment to each other to execute the charter and the work. Second, on the left, is a high-level strategy summary document from one of our clients. These folks won an award. Here they capture all key elements on their one document, which is a different graphic. This was blown up on large boards and hung up in a variety of strategic locations, especially conference meeting rooms, to help communicate the plan and the vision. Plus, when there was discussion on solving a particular problem, the manager would resort to pointing up to the document on the wall that he called his guiding light, and would try and use the plan to help the team go in a certain direction for the issue at hand. I like this graphic, which illustrates how a team-based approach would evolve, especially when using outside experts. I say we like to work ourselves out of a job in our knowledge transfer model. This just shows that over time we train and put our clients in a position of success as the subject matter experts in a planned fashion over the various phases of a program. Some of the solutions. A potential solution to implementation success is set out in my recently published book called Why Execution Fails and What to Do About It. Terry O'Hanlon, as I mentioned, the CEO of Reliability Web, asked me to write a book on how to deliver implementation success. Why? Well, in the previous slide, we showed you that of the 70% failure rate. In addition, we've helped 3 clients win Terry's awards from his awards program, of which I led the change management element. I simply used tips and tricks that I learned from 17 years ago when I was leading the Asset Management Improvement Program in Boston at the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority. Since leaving MWRA, I've used these throughout my years consulting with great success. If you want to learn more, please feel free to visit the website listed below that my lovely 24-year-old daughter helped develop in 4 hours, which would have probably taken me 4 weeks. Terry asked me not to use the term change management because it has a soft connotation. So we use the term execution or execution excellence. But the book is really about people and how to get them engaged to deliver success, whether it be asset management or facility management or any change effort for that matter. It can be applied in many instances. Even my wife has applied some of the tips and tricks in her wellness coaching business. Terry's approach is to build and provide how-to books, simple books, so that his membership and readers can quickly apply learnings to advance the UPTIME elements. From what you can see, hopefully, in the table of contents, a little dark, it's only 30 pages of the model, accompanied by 40 pages of case study and template materials, things you can use tomorrow to move your program along. So what is the Delta Force model? Delta was used because it signifies change, and we simply tied Delta to the planning phase. D for define, E for envision, L for leadership, T for task management, and A for active monitoring. And includes some specific focus areas for each that are in the blue triangle there. For each, you can see that benefits tracking and communication are tied to A for active monitoring. Then we have the force, which I often refer to them as the guiding principles or imperatives that keep the plan, right on the delta, moving ahead from business as usual to best practices. Many of these are people-focused, as you can see. Cultural awareness is key because when you bring teams together from different departments, they inherently bring a culture. Operations has a culture, maintenance has a culture, finance has a culture, and so on. And so does the bottom-up, top-down approach, where you bring the maintenance teams together with key stakeholders. One major and key factor is the O in organization. I like to tell folks, think about the asset management or initiative as a capital construction project and ask, how does a skyscraper get built? Well, it includes scope, schedule, a multi-year budget, project manager, and a diverse team. If you think of your asset management or facility management program in that way, you'll be successful. Next, I would like to show you a case study example where we applied some of the EPA Asset Management 101 elements, plus applied some of the Delta Force principles. This was done at the Shell Technology Center in Houston. Go by the acronym STICH, S-T-C-H, and there was a Phase 1 and Phase 2 Facilities and Asset Integrity Program. Here's an overview of the case study agenda, a brief on the facility overview, Phase 1, which is the condition assessment, Phase 2, which covered the aha moment after Phase 1, what they realized during the pilot, and Phase 2 will cover asset definition, hierarchy, criticality, asset data collection, conformance of their computerized system, and then development of preventive maintenance plans. And then finally, some continuous improvement activities. Remember the simple Asset Management 101 slide. The case study will cover 4 of the 5 questions. We just didn't get into Q5 on the Operations and Maintenance Capital Funding Plan. STCH, which is the Shell Technology Center, Houston. Shell's premier research and development facility is a 220-acre site with some 68 buildings, comprised of a central utility plant, labs, commercial and office space, storage facilities, etc. I picked this example from the many we do across a variety of sectors because I thought it might be the most relevant to our audience today. Okay, on phase 1, condition assessment. A brief on that project. Task 1 was to assess the condition of critical assets in the site utility building. There's somebody in the background there that you can mute your phone. Some discussion going on, thank you.
Yeah.
We picked the site utility building because it was representative sampling of other assets across the campus. It was asset intensive, there were numerous complicated systems, and again, SU the asset registry in PLANON. PLANON is an integrated work management system in a CAFM software that is being used by Shell around the globe. I should mention it's for the real estate group within Shell. The findings, the aha moment. The asset registry in PLANON contained 338 assets for the SU building. However, when the assessment team went out, they found 938 assets in service in the SU building using a typical definition of an asset. They found 600 more assets that Shell thought they had in that facility. 94 of the 338 assets were found to be inaccurately documented or not assets. Hence, the next phase of work. This showed only 26% of the in-service assets were entered in PLANON, the PLANON asset registry. However, if you look at the condition assessment spread, staff were taking care of the assets. It's just that they were not formally accounted for in their PLANON system, which we find in many cases in the organizations we work with. This may be the same for you and your organization. So from the aha moment, it took us to phase 2. The client in PLANON had 5,000 assets. So they realized that they probably have 4 times that from their findings in phase 1. So they hired CH2M Hill to continue into phase 2. And we defined 4 key steps that would move them to the next phase of an asset management program. Defining the asset, a hierarchy, and defining critical assets. From that, going out to the field to collect the appropriate asset data, loading that information into the new PLANON hierarchy, and the developing preventive maintenance service plans to take care of those critical assets. How do we get started? We followed some of the execution excellence tips from the book, including a team charter outlining vision, mission, critical success factors, and guiding principles, signed by all key stakeholders, including our project team as well as the Shell project team. The vision: develop and implement an asset management framework which will improve the building integrity assessment scores at Stitch and provide a foundation for Stitch to be the premier R&D facility in the world for Shell. The building management integrity assessment scores that was done every other year across the Shell facilities to make sure that they were maintaining their assets. It was done by an independent body within Shell. They wanted to maintain those scores. The mission, they created some mission statements here, and this is the first one is the key one, to move Stitch from a work management to an asset management system. They were really just using PLANON for work management and not thinking of it as a holistic management approach. We want to standardize the asset data in PLANON, improve confidence in the system reliability. We're developing reports for executive people. Develop the ability to roll up costs and hours to a system level. They didn't know where the money was being spent. They didn't know where the problematic systems were, where they could do the Pareto 80-20 analysis, where 20% of your assets are causing 80% of your problems. Increase accountability and develop the ability to audit maintenance effectiveness. And last but not least, lower direct costs through optimization of service plans. On the right is the charter, and down below is signed by all the key stakeholders that were in that meeting. Task 1, define asset hierarchy and critical assets. These are very much workshop-based tasks as an approach to get buy-in for sustainability of the program implementation once we left. We also coordinated with Shell's global PLANON team to be sure that we followed some pre-established guidelines. So asset definition ensures asset performance and cost data is collected at a level of detail to support reliable and cost-effective operations. Ensures new assets are entered into PLANON in a consistent manner. Ensures a proper maintenance is performed at the proper interval. It's a little blurry to the right, but what it is an asset definition document that is now formal and used by the client. It provides a structured relationship. So the asset hierarchy provides a structured relationship between assets, systems, and buildings. Provides the ability to roll up costs in cost centers, which support effective management of operations and maintenance costs. Here on the right is an example of some of the hierarchy that was built. We used the Uniform Act code. It was a standard approach from Shell Real Estate globally. Last but not least is the asset criticality. In this task, we took into consideration Shell's corporate risk framework. We did not start from scratch. CH2M Hill has a methodology, but we incorporated Shell's. Criticality establishes a relative level of severity that Stitch would likely experience in the event of a loss of service for each system as it applies in different buildings or applications on the site. Provides a guide for focusing resources where Stitch receives the greatest return on investment. In the graphic below, you can see we like to have, we call them level of service categories, or LOS categories on the far left, in the categories of health and safety, financial impact, environmental impact, reputation, and delivery of services. Second column in, you can see that there are weightings that can be put in by the client, and then we have come up with definitions of the scoring. There are 5 categories. The weightings are, the scores are 1, 3, 5, 7, and 10. And there are definitions that are made available. We show up with an example template for the client, and through a workshop setting, we build what's appropriate for the client. In this case, this is what Shell used. Task 2, data collection of information in the field. We deployed highly effective teams and used tools to help with efficiency, with the efficiency factor. Here we show that in red, just highlighted, that we figured that they had about 5,000 assets in PLANON, but because we saw what happened in the SU building, the results we expected to collect around 20,000 assets, and we did. Some 21,000 assets by the time we get done with it. So the objective was to canvass all buildings, collect the missing asset information that met the newly defined asset definition, deploy 3 two-person teams for 2 months. Obviously, there's a lot of coordination with building managers, especially with lab managers that were conducting research. We relied on the maps that were loaded into PLANON, and we used data collection tools like tablets and computers to collect the information, which resulted in about 135 asset types in the end, and about 21,000 assets. As mentioned, we have a tool, MS Access. So we uploaded the tool with the 5,000 assets in PLANON. We understood that it wouldn't be complete, but we took all the information that was available to us. We were accompanied by site staff who knew where a lot of these places were. And as you can see on this table here, you see we've got bridge cranes with space location, with no location remarks, where you might get all the way down to the air handling unit, AHU1, which actually gives us a space location and some location remarks. So a variety of different information in PLANON, and our goal was to go out and collect all the appropriate information. So we had a really robust data set in PLANON. Along the way, numerous quality control checks and reports to help keep the teams on schedule and on budget, and to make sure the data we were collecting was appropriate. Task 3, conform the PLANON hierarchy. This is basically the alignment of the assets into the agreed upon hierarchy from what we found in the field. So the objective is to conform the assets into the hierarchy, and we created an upload sheet for PLANON. How we did it, we built that upload sheet with the client, worked with the Shell PLANON corporate team. It grouped numerous assets by types, parent-child relationships, calculated the required fields. So we worked very closely with the SRE, which is Shell Real Estate PLANON experts. As mentioned, we didn't want to be doing this in a vacuum, and the Shell Real Estate PLANON experts have a global community of practice. They were very happy to see what the Stitch site was doing, and they've taken some of the lessons learned on and applied them across some of the other sites. We organized the assets to minimize administrative work while maintaining hierarchy needed for maintenance history. So the results are we reduced the 21,000 assets to around 6,000 by creating grouped assets, basically for routing of preventive maintenance activities. We uploaded these into the PLANON sandbox, which is a temporary database. We also found there were 1,400 assets that we needed to delete or decommission out of PLANON, so the database was robust and accurate. And we streamlined the upload template, created that and streamlined the upload template for use in PLANON that can now be used for the future. Again, there were 136 asset types, very, very similar to what those on the call will see at their site. As noted here, 61 were not previously in PLANON. So it was a very good discussion between the consultant team and the on-site facility managers and maintenance managers, and leverage some of the best practices that are out there around asset types, asset hierarchy, and hospitality. Task 4, development and update of service plans. The objective was to develop industry standard service plans and tasks and task frequencies. What was originally in PLANON was very generic. Go inspect the pump. Go inspect the fan. It wasn't very specific. However, they really relied on the local trade staff knowledge, who were very good at what they were doing. It's just they couldn't use the PLANON tool to identify the needed resources that they had required to manage that site to keep it at an optimal efficiency level. So we assigned trades and estimated hours, and we assigned some of the activities into routine, statutory, mandatory, or regulatory. So they could slice and dice the different preventive maintenance service plans that were based on regulatory or statutory requirements. How we did it, we consulted O&M manuals, interviewed the on-site staff, utilized CH2M Hill, preventive maintenance, subject matter expertise, knowledge, and we have a robust library of preventive maintenance job plans. And as well, we did electronic data collection and upload. So in the end, we created about 150 service plans with 136 asset types, which included labor estimates, scheduling purposes, and again, we did create a streamlined upload template for PLANON. Here's the tool. We created an MS Excel tool, one created per asset type with drop-down lists, formulas automated, automatically created codes and disciplines in different colored fields, and then we created upload templates. And you can see here, this is on the code gen, and you can see there's a frequency there, and activity of the standard base activity, whether it's routine or it's statutory, mandatory, and the trade, and then estimated hours. It's just a screenshot from the upload tool. Those are basically the 4 tasks, which sort of answer questions 1 through 4 of the EPA Asset Management 101. fifth question is about robust financial plans. We did not get into that as part of the project. However, for continuous improvement on a report out with the client, we talked about a few things, and I'll cover two here. One is operations and maintenance readiness, what we call it O&M ready. And then the second thing is having a holistic program framework tied around the uptime elements. These are recommendations to Shell Stitch for the next steps of their continuous improvement program. So O&M ready is basically new asset or facility turnover. So they've just developed all these requirements for asset naming and hierarchy, for better maintenance information. And as we all know, our design and construction teams may still continue to send us the information in the old way, which usually isn't very helpful. So to keep all this hard work in a sustainable process moving forward, we share with them the process called O&M ready, which is having new asset facility data and information turned over by having specifications and requiring the design and construction team to follow these newly created protocols, such as asset definition, service plan requirements, and warranty information, to be delivered in an orderly fashion and meeting our new standards versus the traditional unorganized information turnover process. So we have the assets uploaded in the PLANON before facility commissioning. Service plans are in PLANON at startup, just like when you buy a new car. We have warranty specifications, so there can be triggers when warranty is about to expire. And all maintenance requirements are done during the period performed, or recommended, I'm sorry. The second one is having a holistic program framework tied to the uptime elements. We also recommended, as depicted earlier in the presentation, that they embark on a more holistic framework to move from work management to asset management, and the possible adoption of something like the uptime elements to ensure that all the correct areas are identified and working together like a fine watch. As noted in Shell's team charter, their mission statement included moving Stitch from work management to asset management. We believe that aligning to such a framework as the uptime elements is a good model to get them there. That concludes our presentation, and I'm open for a few minutes of questions.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
We do have a couple questions. So first one, regarding the certifications, are continuing ed hours required every year or every other year in order to maintain those certifications?
Yes, there are. And so for, at least for the CMRP, I'm not sure, I don't think there is for the CRL and the IAM, but for the CMRP, every 3 years you have to prove that you've got 40 hours of CEUs, and it's a pretty wide open process. I just actually updated mine last year, and everything from attending classes to writing articles to actually coaching and training people within your organization. You know, around some of these best practices are part of that. It's an honor system as to what you document there. So that's the only one right now that has the renewals that I know of is the CMRP and the CMRT.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hello, John. This is John Fantasia. The second question was, how, and I think you might have went over this, how did you do condition assessment?
So how we did condition assessment, so we actually, I'm sorry?
I think this question was asked before you had kind of gone through the process, but.
That's okay. I can give a thumbnail, because what's important here is that we followed the protocols that are outlined in the International Infrastructure Management Manual, which I showed as one of the reference books. I called it the Bible, because they have a ranking of 1 being in good condition and 5 being in poor condition, because once you put them into an Excel framework and you start multiplying the numbers, you want the ones with the highest risk to be the ones that are flagged. And there are other organizations, I think ASCE perhaps, and a few others that actually have a reverse recommendation, and they actually have 5 is bad and 5, I mean, 5 is good and 1 is bad. So if you think about plugging those into, an Excel tool that calculates risk, which is consequence times likelihood, the likelihood is where condition fits. It's one of those levels of service. And so we believe that is more robust representation of condition. And so we use that scoring methodology, and we follow what's sort of outlined in that book as far as how they define a 1 and a 5 as well. So you need to have so when the teams go out there to score the assets, they need to be scoring things similarly. In many cases, what we'll do if it's a new team is we'll go out and do a pilot assessment of maybe one system where we will train, the assessment teams to what a 1 versus a 5 is, so that we have consistency. And in many cases, we have what we call an asset information manager, AIM, and that's the central person. His name was Jake on this particular project. So as the reports came in and there are questions, he could help serve as the central repository or knowledge manager if there were questions between, say, or 2 or 3, etc. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
Thank you. The next question is a two-part question, John. How do you see technology changing? And I can follow up that maybe the second part might help you with the first part. How do you provide maintenance to assets, for example, such as predictive maintenance tools and building information modeling?
Well, that's a wide set of questions. So where I see technology changing, I guess it'd be a two-part answer, would be that they're moving to an enterprise asset management system these days that connects with the financial systems and HR systems for some of the more complex organizations, and then moving away from some of the standalone, individual CAFM systems and CMS systems. In addition to that, they're putting handheld devices into the operations and maintenance team's hands so that they're not carrying around a paper work order, but they're actually making it very simple with simple drop-down menus if they're going to go out and do inspections, to make it very easy for them, so a few clicks to answer the questions. As well, they're trying to collect problem cause remedy information, which has not been captured in the past. So if you go out and find something, a lot of times people would say, we fixed it, or we closed the work order with no details, and it doesn't really tell people how the asset is performing out in the field. So they have these required fields called problem cause remedy. Sometimes what was the problem, what was the cause, and what was the remedy. What we're seeing as the next generation of asset managers and facility managers out there are really two types of people that will be staffing that organization, and that would be a reliability engineer and a data analyst. So as the information gets more robust and more useful in these computerized systems, they can tell a story. The history can tell a story. So the data analyst is there to pull the information out, and the reliability engineer is there to look at mean time between failure and those sort of things. We can help predict the next failure and work with finance and engineering to put a capital program in place before it fails. So that's some of the changing technology. As far as providing maintenance on assets such as predictive maintenance, yes, if you looked at the uptime elements, there's a whole section there on they call it condition-based maintenance, and that's very robust these days. And they're very simple devices out there. Some of our groups have put the real simple, $50 infrared or $50 vibration tools in the hands of the operators that do rounds, and some of them then have a secondary, more robust condition monitoring or predictive maintenance team. That if they find something that looks awry, they then deploy the experts who are trained in acoustics and infrared and their tribology and lubrication oils and stuff like that. So the technology has changed quite a bit. That you saw earlier the reliability center maintenance guide. If you do reliability center maintenance, you look at failure modes. You usually do it in critical assets, and the failure modes push you towards doing predictive maintenance. So that's where industry is going, and the technology is there, and it's fairly inexpensive these days. As far as BIM, which is sort of, so that goes back to the technology, which is building information management, what companies are trying to do today. We've been talking about it for 15 years since I've been doing this, is we're building these 3D models during design and construction. We're putting all kinds of data in those models. The data could be transferable to a system like PLANON or Maximo or other systems that could be reused for the operations and maintenance teams, versus typically it gets delivered to the engineer by the engineers. A lot of times the clients don't use it, and in many cases the operations and maintenance teams end up redoing all that data that could have been transferred from the BIM system into the CMS system or the CAFM system. What that requires is, as I mentioned, O&M ready. In that bucket of O&M ready, I would call that the facility manager requirements. And if they're doing a design in BIM, the facility managers would provide their data standards to the design team, and they would use those so that when they delivered the model and or drawings, they would use the unique identifiers and all the naming standards and hierarchies that the facilities team would be using. So it's been talked about for years. People are trying to do it, but we still have those functional silos between design and construction and facilities and operations. So it is available to folks, and it's not that difficult to do. Hopefully I answered that 2 or 3 part question.
Great. Yep. And then we just have one more question. Have you ever included a mobile asset in your process? For example, medical equipment that can be used in multiple areas of a facility. What would you do differently to track that type of item?
I have not, but we do have, we track assets by location. So if assets do move around, you want to take the history with it. So depending on how you set up your asset hierarchy and how you track your data, especially when it comes to if you move, say, motors, for example, that you rotate in and out of your warehouse, that they maybe as a spare part, and then the next year maybe actually serving its purpose in its functional location. So being thoughtful about that. So whether you're a mobile asset, it should be treated the same way. So the history should follow that asset, so that so when it comes out of the inventory, if you've got some history on it, so the reliability engineer can see, failure modes, have seen some history on it, so they can develop and make sure the preventive maintenance program should follow that asset around. Of course, the duty may change a little bit, so it might go from a 24/7, operation to a duty standby, operate cycle on and off, and that's where the review of the preventive maintenance program is important, or the service plans, they were called at Shell, is that if you have a reliability engineer, which is one of the things we're recommending these days, you have a reliability/maintenance engineer, which many organizations don't have, and those people are the ones that look at the history in your system, and they're the ones that keep an eye on the PM job plans, and as assets move around, that the correct application of preventive maintenance meets the service that it's providing, again, whether it's 24/7 operation or if it cycles on and off every 20, 30 minutes.
Great. Thank you. All right, we're nearly out of time. John, thank you so much. We appreciate it. This was great, very informative. And thanks. Until we have our next webinar, we'll see you guys again soon. Bye.
Terrific. Well, thank you all. Here's my contact information. And again, I just personally thank all of you and thank IFMA for taking time out of your busy day to learn more about asset management. And in closing, may the Delta Force be with you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Have a good day, John.